Two mortals climb the steps, both wearing polished plate, wielding swords, axes, maces, morning stars, whatever tool they think will break through steel and bone the fastest. The crowd erupts in applause, eagerly anticipating the imminent brutality. Which contender will be victorious? The only guarantee is that fresh blood will flow through the metal grating at the arena's heart, seeping down onto the gladiators below like an ominous crimson rain shower, forecasting the fate that awaits them in their bout. To the gods of the Elder Scrolls, the willingness of mortals to violently slaughter one another must be a bit perplexing, but even immortals understand the honor and glory that comes exclusively from battle, the adrenaline rush, the ultimate risk of death, the roar of the crowd, the unrivaled euphoria of victory. As with most things, mortals mimic the gods, and many of the deities in the Elder Scrolls universe are warriors themselves. These gods inspire mortals to be courageous in war and relentless when their lives are on the line. But what would happen if we were to put the very best warrior gods in the arena? No tricks, no omnipotent intervention, just their combat prowess. The quintessential competition between the universe's most competent combatants. These gods have an embittered history of conflict, and pride is at stake as well as glory. Well, ladies and gents, today we're going to throw these two warrior gods into the arena, and we're going to determine who is the greatest divine warrior in the realms of Oblivion and Aetherius, Boethiah or Trinimac. These titans clashed heads once before, long ago in the Dawn Era. This conflict changed the fate of two of Tamriel's well-known races, the Orcs and the Dark Elves. But before we tackle their history, let's get to know our combatants. In an Oblivion realm ravaged by storms, Boethiah watches over his endless oceans of lava. The plain is named Snake Mount, and the only things more twisted than the labyrinthine maze gardens and winding ebony towers are the inhabitants. Finding dry land may give you a respite from the molten flows, but beware of the Daedra living here, for they are obsessed with politics, and by politics, I mean deceit and bloody betrayal. The realm is renowned for hosting the universe's most prestigious arena tournaments, where mortals are pitted against one another to earn the favour of the Dark Warrior, Boethiah. An example of one of these events is the Tournament of 10 Bloods, in which champions from each of the 10 major Tamrielic races are captured and forced to battle one-on-one to the death. The gathered crowds of Dromora bet and cheer as gallons of mortal blood spills across the stone walls of the arena. The victor becomes Boethiah's chosen one, and may even be given a prize like possession of one of his artifacts. Those who understand how to please Boethiah learn that she is not a mindless brute, and won't simply kill every mortal haphazardly. One of her worshippers realized this, and when she appeared before his congregation, he thrust his blade through another worshipper as a tribute to the Daedra Lord. Boethiah was pleased by this show of dominance. She smiled, and the gates of Oblivion opened between her teeth. The Prince of Plots is evidently no stranger to gladiatorial combat, and is well prepared for this matchup. Competition and battle is so fundamental to Boethiah's sphere that she always appears to mortals as a great caped warrior, regardless of gender. Statues in his honor capture his rigid stoicism, and the Daedra worshippers frequenting his shrines will be quick to preach to you about Boethiah's affinity for war. They quote the prayers written in Boethiah's glory, which say, "Look upon the face of Boethiah and wonder. Raise your arms that Boethiah may look on them and bestow a blessing. Know that battle is a blessing. Know that death is an eventuality. Know that you are the dust in the eyes of Boethiah. Long is the arm of Boethiah, and swift is the blade. Into battle strides the Daedra prince, blade at the ready to cleave the unworthy." Whether mortal or god, challenging Boethiah to a fight is practically suicide. But there is one god who would beg to differ, the warrior god of the Aldmer, Auriel's champion and enforcer Trinimac. Modern mortals don't hear this name, as he has been gone for a very long time. Back in the Dawn and Malefic eras, he was a prominent figure. To the early Aldmer, he was arguably the most popular deity in the realm. He was a night spirit above all else, and lived to lead elven armies into war against mankind. With his divine sword penitent, or Voshrak, the Blade of Courage, Trinimac was an unstoppable warrior. When the Aedra learned of Lorkhan's deception, it was Trinimac who stood on the front lines of the ensuing war between the elves and the tricksters' armies of men. Trinimac was victorious, and according to the legends, he knocked knocked Lorkhan down, and using more than just hands, Trinimac ripped the trickster's still-beating heart out of his chest. But this is where things get interesting. With all of this in mind, how could any entity defeat Trinimac? Well, the gods who assisted Lorkhan in creating the mortal realm were witnessing their power being drawn from them. Mundus relied on their divine essence, and for a warrior god like Trinimac, this must have been especially concerning. The Daedra, though, they opted out of creation, and thus retained all of their power. Even then, the strongest of the Daedra would still scoff at the thought of a Daedra lord defeating them. Boethiah, the goddess of destruction, was not disheartened by this, for the Prince of Plots had other tricks up her sleeve. Boethiah had a different view of the world to Trinimac. Perhaps it came from her outside perspective. But while Trinimac rued Lorkhan's deception, mourning the gradual decline in his powers, Boethiah the precocious youth saw Lorkhan's deeds as a challenge, a puzzle to be solved by mortals. Trinimac may have been the strongest of the Atada, but he spent most of his time brooding. Meanwhile, Boethiah schemed with his ally Mephala. Various sources attest to what happened next, but by the very nature of the Merethic era, no individual text can be taken as gospel. Boethiah faced off against Trinimac, consumed him, and assumed his form. He corrupted Trinimac and transformed him into a vile beast. Gone was Trinimac's elven glory, replaced by ashen skin, brutish tusks, and monstrous horns. Before we talk about the consequences of this clash, we can't gloss over the fact that Trinimac, the warrior god, the champion of the elven pantheon, was not only beaten, but completely humiliated by Boethiah the Deceiver. This is where the slight differences in the available sources complicate things. If we're to believe the Orcish scholar Ramabak Gro Abermath, Trinimac was the one to confront Boethiah for deceiving his followers and turning them into the Chimera. This trespass could not go unpunished, otherwise all manner of Daedra would start taking liberties. So Trinimac challenged Boethiah and dominated him in battle. Trinimac was about to strike a crushing blow on the bested Prince of Plots, but at the last moment, Mephala materialized and stabbed Trinimac in the back with one of her spindling arachnid legs. Trinimac fell to his knees in agony, beaten by treachery, and then Boethiah regained her feet, gloated, and cursed Trinimac to become the corrupted Morlock. Let's not ignore the obvious fact that an Orcish writer would have some problematic biases. Most sources don't mention Mephala's involvement, but still emphasize Boethiah's usage of trickery. One says Boethiah tricked Trinimac to go into his mouth. Others go so far as to say Boethiah devoured him entirely, sending the disgraced champion on a slow descent through the prince's bowels, before finally he relieved himself of Trinimac, right there on the ground before the gathered elves. Whatever Boethiah had done to persuade the changed ones to migrate to the mainland must have been convincing, and a display of such utter dominance over the most beloved god in the elven pantheon would have been one hell of a statement. When Trinimac crawled from Boethiah's excrement, he was changed. He was Malakath, the Daedra lord of curses, of the spurned and the ostracized. Boethiah exiled him to a plane of choking ash, where anguish and betrayal hang in the air as thick as the smoke and dust. His followers were changed and exiled too, becoming the Awesomer. Unsurprisingly, Malakath became twisted by his desire for revenge. But what would have happened in a fair fight? Would Trinimac be eaten by Boethiah? For a god so fond of competition, Boethiah is remarkably good at cheating and avoiding a fair fight. As a result, he seldom shows his true strength in battle. Trinimac, on the other hand, was not the type to employ dodgy tactics. He was on the front lines, in the bloody crux of the battle. He remained among the infantry against Lorkhan's legions even as his power was drained by the upkeep of Mundus. And when he ripped the heart from the trickster's chest, he proved his superiority over the god of all mortals. To the Nords, Lorkhan was a warrior king named Shor. He built Sovngarde and reigned supreme over all the brilliant heroes who proved their mettle or died valiantly in battle. Despite all of his shield thanes and champions, Shor was no match for Trinimac. That's a big sign of the elven warrior god's might. Trinimac is renowned and beloved by elves all over the continent, and the glory of his memory will never fade. But that does pose the question, how much does his popularity affect our perception when making this comparison? Their first confrontation occurred in the distant past. No one at this time venerated the Daedra, so why would anyone preach about Boethiah's strength? There's also the fact that memories are all well and good, but Boethiah exists today at his peak power. Trinimac, on the other hand, is gone from the world, and only remains in his cursed and soiled form Malakath. Varieties of faith in the Empire described Malakath as a weak and vengeful version of Trinimac, and this makes sense considering the fact that Malakath has done nothing to avenge Boethiah's betrayal. Were he anything like Trinimac, surely he would have torn the Dark Warrior's heart out like he did with Lorkhan. Trinimac was changed by his transformation. What if Trinimac in all of his former glory were to ascend the crimson-stained steps of Snake Mount, walk to the center of the arena, and point his sword penitent at the realm's overlord? Boethiah would have no choice but to fight. The Prince of Plot may have the support of the spectators and the home field advantage, but Trinimac is the paragon of physical prowess. He won a great victory in Mundus while Lorkhan sapped his divine power, and there is no escaping the fact that he would do it again in Boethiah's plane of Oblivion. His achievements are undeniable, and when the steel portcullis gates of the arena close behind our two competitors, Boethiah's love for battle will not save him. In the Colosseum there are no shadows to spring out of. There are no schemes, there's only skill. That's why Boethiah used trickery all those centuries ago, and why Trinimac would win. And there you have it, guys, a clash between two mighty warrior gods, one from Oblivion, the other from Aetherius. There are other warrior gods to talk about in future videos, and if you'd like to see them, let me know in the comments. But there's something special about the rivalry between these two deities. And if you can't tell already, I love talking about the Aedra and Daedra of the Elder Scrolls. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks so much for watching. My name's Drew, and I'll see you in the next one.